just like we get asked to pitch for new business from a third-party management perspective, do we ever turn that down? No, because, and even if it's not us, it doesn't end up being us. It was an opportunity to prove what we have to bring to the table. It's so important to stay in regular communication with your agencies and make sure that you're giving them the information they need to be successful. We can't work in silos. You can't just say, hey, I want to hire a digital agency and I'm just going to set it and forget it. It doesn't work that way. Depending upon the agency and the level of integrations, they might not have all of the data that we have. And so communicating and sharing that data is going to be so valuable and like wildly important in order for them to be successful.
Okay, we're here with Michelle. Michelle, introduce yourself.
Hi, I am Michelle Smith. I am the VP of Digital Strategy with Willow Bridge Property Company. Been there 5 years and in the industry for over 16 now.
Wow.
Yeah.
Incredible.
And you started on-site student housing, right?
Yes, that is correct. I started on-site student housing. Call your companies, Gainesville, Florida, Go Gators.
You've seen it all.
Yeah.
You have seen it all.
Oh, 1,000,000% seen it all. Yeah. So.
Well, we're super excited to chat with you. Obviously, we've known you forever.
Almost a decade.
Dear friends.
I did the math. I think it's been like 9 years.
Oh.
Wow.
Isn't that crazy?
That is crazy.
Yeah. I'm
We
excited.
old.
Yeah.
I thought you were going to laugh at the we old part, Nicole,
I
but
didn't hear
instead I
you.
heard
What'd
you.
you say?
Oh, okay. I just said we were old.
Oh, we're old. Oh, yeah, totally.
Well, we're here to talk today about how to, how best to partner with your vendors, or
Yeah,
what
I
was
mean, one of the topics we were kind of kicking around was just like over the years, we've developed such a great partnership with
Yeah.
you. And so you've been great at like being very articulate and providing good feedback. And so I think there's just value to be gained of like partnerships, how to be a true partner with someone, how to work with different companies in the industry, even internally. Like we've talked on the podcast before, just about like breaking down silos and cross communication and collaboration with different departments. And so I've learned a lot from partnering with you over the years. And so I think that could be a valuable topic to dive into.
I thank you so much for that. Like, that just makes me feel so good.
Yeah, and what I think is also going to be great with you is like we've worked together from when you really just first got into the marketing like role or near, and now you've gone all the way up to corporate.
Yeah.
So I just mean you've seen some multiple levels.
I've seen different, we've worked together for a long time in different levels, and my knowledge has obviously expanded over those years. And so it's been really fun.
Yeah, so I think it'll be great to hear like from those different positions how you would advise vendors to work in a better partnership capacity, because there are different initiatives that maybe corporate has versus like someone that's managing a portfolio of properties and so on and so forth.
Yeah.
So where do you want to get started?
You tell me.
Well, let's start. I think it's well, actually, I was going to say easy to start from bottom to top, but Nicole, what do you think? Should we go top to bottom?
I think actually starting bottom to top would be valuable.
All right, let's go there. So like when you first, I don't know if you want to start at like marketing associate or manager, but one of those roles where you're starting to manage a few properties. Mm-hmm. How best could a vendor partner and not sort of have opposing agendas?
Yeah, I think the standard across all of these positions is always going to be communication. And that's something that I even said earlier is like radical candor. Like, let's just be open and honest and let's have a good conversation versus like beating around the bush or dancing around a subject. Like, go ahead and name the elephant in the room and talk about it. So like that I think is like a baseline thing. And so I think from like the marketing associate, marketing manager position on those like regional levels, it's so important to stay in regular communication with your agencies and make sure that you're giving them the information they need to be successful. We can't work in silos. You can't just say, hey, I want to hire a digital agency and I'm just going to set it and forget it. It doesn't work that way. Depending upon the agency and the level of integrations, they might not have all of the data that we have. And so communicating and sharing that data is going to be so valuable and like wildly important. In order for them to be successful. Like I know, Nicole, we've talked about this a ton over the years of like a true partnership. Like we meet in the middle, it's 50-50. It's never about like, oh, this is your job and you're supposed to do this. It's like, no, like let me help you help me kind of thing. Mm-hmm. So yeah, I think when you're on that regional level, like communicating with your your vendor partners about what's happening on your properties that you oversee. So if you have a portfolio of 5, if you have a portfolio of 10, if you have a portfolio of 50, like whatever it is, like regular constant communication about, hey, here's what's happening. So a great example, let's just say one of your properties has a fire and a building is down. So guess what? Your availability just dropped because you have down units for a period of time. Your digital agency needs to know that so that they can help you strategize. Like, okay, well, then maybe we pull back budget here and maybe we bring it in later once those units are back up again. Totally. But if you don't communicate that, they're going to keep sending you leads that you can't do anything with. So, yeah, I would say.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think on the regional marketing level too, it's like the more information you can provide to your partners or vendors, the better. So it's communication, but it's also the why. So, in my experience, it's as an agency, sometimes you just receive the request, right? But there's a whole string of whys behind that request. It's like, oh, well, it's actually because I need that report for this Tuesday meeting because my boss needs it for the Wednesday meeting, and I'm going to transpose it to whatever format, or I'm going to do something with it, whatever that may be. The more you can give that context, the more we can work together to, A, hit the timeline, and, maybe improve the process. Yeah. And so I think it's really being transparent in the communication, but the why behind some of the requests is so important. I feel like you've done a great job of that over the years, and so I think that helps build the foundation for a relationship based on trust, so that you can have that radical candor.
Correct.
Right?
Yeah.
If and when those situations arises, it's all based on the communication and trust.
Correct. Yeah, I think that's a really great point, is definitely the why, and sometimes sharing the nitty-gritty details of, it's like, hey, like, this one's really challenging, and here's why it's really challenging, and like, please help. Like, how can you help me here? Totally. And I think we were just talking about this over breakfast, and it's like, I always hate the idea that, let's say that you have partnered with an agency, and then let's say, I don't know, service slips, or there's a turnover, and you're just not really vibing with your new rep. People just cancel. And it's like, why? Why can't we have that conversation to talk about it a little bit more and say, like, hey, like, I need the reporting this way, or I need you to handle a call this way because this is how I operate, or this is what I like, or this is what I need, like, to be successful on my side, and what do you need to be successful on your side? And I think that goes to that point that you were saying, is like, yeah, why? Why? Where is it coming from? Like, where's the request coming from? It's like, we don't want to just do work for work's sake. Yeah. We have so much, like, our time is limited. Let's make it valuable. Yeah.
Totally. And something else that just came to mind, we were talking to someone that popped by, and we're chatting with them yesterday on, like, hey, I don't want to bother your team. So I have this new acquisition coming online. We've never done an acquisition before, but I'm going to wait to send it to you all because you probably don't need to know about it.
And
I don't
they
want to
didn't have the
bother
budget
you all.
yet.
I don't have the budget yet, so there's really not much for you to do. And I was like, I hear you, and I love that mindset and that thought process of protecting the team's time. I'm all about that. Yeah. And also, tell us now, please. Because we will be able to do prep, and we can do research, and maybe we have other properties in that market, and we can actually help you do what you need to do to get the budget, then send it to us. So I think just that true partnership of, like, two-way street, open communication, tell us your goals, your projects, your initiatives. We might not be able to help on everything, but there's definitely stuff that we can build upon on that foundation.
1,000,000%. And I think, I would do the exact opposite in that situation. I would say, hey, just a heads up, we have a lot more coming on. So, like, are you guys prepared? Can we scale?
Right.
And I think, what's something interesting to think about. So if we're talking again about this marketing associate manager position, this position is very similar to an account manager position on your side. And so, if you have this account manager, they have a certain amount of properties that they can help maintain and support. And so it's like, if you're going to get 35 new assets and you want to give them all to this partner, can that person sustain that? Can they scale that? Or does the agency need to know, like, hey, new assets are coming on. Let's start talking about people positions and how we move around. And it's the same thing on the, on the management side. We have to have those conversations all the time. It's like, hey, we're bringing on a new portfolio. Do we need to hire another marketing person here? And I think that's so incredibly valuable, and giving more of a heads up and saying, like, hey, here's where we're at. And it's actually something I recently did with your team. So, I
Well,
know
I-
this is something we do.
Yeah, I would say that's a pretty advanced move for like an associate or a manager to handle.
It is, for
but,
sure.
I think like to give some language to it, that it could be like, hey, just was curious, how many properties does the account manager typically manage?
Yep.
It's like, oh, I don't know, 60 or 80 or whatever.
Yep.
It's like, okay, great. How much does Elise have right now?
Mhm.
Like 55. It's like, oh, okay, great to know. Just so you know, we're getting 35 more this year.
Yep.
I'm going to try to send those over to you, and you know how timing changes, but let's plan now for
Yep.
when it happens so that Elise doesn't get overloaded, because I
Yep.
really don't want to have two different managers
Correct.
or whatever. So that can give, that's the why behind it. And then
Yeah.
also, like, I'm not trying to, because a vendor could take that very personally, like you're trying to find something, you're digging for dirt or something.
Yeah.
And instead it's like, no, I want to help you succeed.
Yeah.
And likewise for the vendor, you guys mentioned this 50-50 earlier in the conversation, and that what we often did was we're like, okay, what level of experience or education does our person have, our associate or a manager or director, whoever have? And then we'd try to put them on a track that we'd be teaching them, and we'd say like, hey, in our experience, this is like how this typically works in the industry. Are you familiar with that? Or like whatever. You do it in a way that doesn't I don't know, like belittle them, but you are just more of like, I just want to meet you where you're at, and then I want to help also fast track your own learning, because internally, you know, I don't know if this was your experience, Michelle, but when I first started at companies as someone lower on the totem pole, I was like kind of nervous to ask questions. I was like, I don't want to show my ignorance. So instead, having this trusted partner outside that can be like, I don't know if this is how it works at your company, and maybe you do if you've worked with that company for a while, but you can say like, let me just sort of show you some of the dark corners real quick so that you kind of have your wits about you. And then you up level them throughout, but you don't overload them like with like stuff that you'd be talking to a director or VP about right now until they're ready or they're curious.
Yeah. No, I think it's a great point. You guys know I ask a lot of questions. I don't know if it's a fault, but I.
No.
Okay. Well, thank you. But I ask a lot of questions, and I think like, you know, yes, at that level, it can be very intimidating when you're talking to people that you're like, wow, these people are brilliant. They know what they're doing. Like, what do I do? Just ask the question, because then there's an understanding of where each person sits. And then, you know, I think when it comes to digital, things are changing regularly. I don't know it all. You know, I've been doing this for a long time, but I still don't know everything. And I still am constantly asking questions, like trying to learn more, you know, with how quickly things change. So I think there's no shame in asking questions and really partnering with them from, if it's something I don't know, or if it's just, how do you guys run? I think this was one of the very first questions I asked you guys at Digible. Is I was like, how many properties do your account managers oversee? Like, I just want to understand what that portfolio looks like, right? Because maybe in a past life I had experience where it's like, oh, I felt shortchanged because this person had way too much or something like that. So I think asking questions, and then I think, you know, like you said, it's a conversation for a higher position, like a VP or a director, to like communicate, you know, those portfolio shifts and things like that.
Yeah, I would never like tell someone not to go that direction. I'm just saying like that can feel scary, might feel scary to someone that's a few years into their career, and so it more advanced, but you can definitely go there. So as we move up, like if you're now at the director level, how might the conversations or the way you work together change?
I think it gets a lot more intimate, truly, for a lack of a better term. And, you know, something that I've done with you guys at Digible, and I would do with a lot of digital agencies that we work with, is let's set a monthly call just to talk like about things. There's no agenda per se. I'm not reviewing reporting, right? Like, that's not my role in this time. But my role is, how do I help streamline and connect the dots? And so let's just set a monthly call to touch base. And you know what? Some months that might take a whole hour, and some months that might take 15 minutes. But it's so much better to touch base and say, okay, here's what I have going on. What do you have going on? What do we need to inform each other about? And then I think it's also an opportunity to bring in some of that radical candor and talk about overall performance or service level, the things that you need to be successful. And so I think those are the meetings and the opportunities where you can talk to that partner and say, hey, look, like, this reporting is not what we need. How can we improve it?
Yeah.
What can I do to help improve this process? Do you need feedback? Is there something I can provide to you? Or, hey, like, I love this account manager, but I just feel like they're overwhelmed. Like,
Yeah.
I know that we've grown a lot recently. What about some extra support here? Like, the service just isn't what we think it should be and or what we're used to. And I think those types of meetings, those regular monthly calls to discuss those things, again, it's talk about the elephant in the room, and build the bridge to work together to fix it. And I am a firm believer that I am not right. You can tell me I am wrong all the time. And I'm like, okay, that's totally fine. And I'd rather that. But don't dance around it and say, like, you know, oh, well, and you don't want to say something because you're afraid of offending me. It's like, no, just tell it to me straight and we'll figure it out from there. And so, and I think if it's a true partnership, those tough conversations are easier because at the end of the day, you guys know that you're working together for that one goal, right? And that one goal is to support the properties, to support our clients, to make everybody successful. We want to look good. We want you to look good. Like, tell me what I need to know. So.
Totally. I would also say, like, for any, partners listening, I've always found it easier to, like, bring the problem. Let me say the problem so you don't have to say it. That's if you know it, right?
Yeah,
There could be situations where it's like you find something like, oh, I'm surprised. Not a great situation.
Yeah.
But if you bring it forward, it's like, let's make it safe to talk about. And I think that ultimately in the long run builds the trust because no one is going to be perfect. Like it's very rare, like on those monthly calls, to be like, this is a 10 out of 10. Everything's great.
Yes.
So, a lot of times it's like mostly great, but we're two companies and two people evolving together. And so if you can talk about the great stuff, celebrate that, focus on what we need to fix, but then also just make it safe. And I think the way you make it safe with a client is to like bring it first.
Yeah.
You uncover the dirt so that they don't feel like they have to do the dirty work, if you will.
I could not agree more with that, and I think this is something that Digible has done really great. And like I said, we were actually talking about this exact conversation over breakfast, and somebody at the table said, I think Digible does this better than anybody, that when there is an issue, they're in your inbox almost immediately, as opposed to maybe sweeping the issue under the rug and then you seeing reporting 2 months later and go, what happened here? And so, I mean, it just happened with us, like, maybe 2 weeks ago. Kelly and Nate call me and say, hey, Michelle, we need to talk to you about something. I'm like, okay, let's talk. And was it an enjoyable conversation? No. I'd rather be talking to you guys about where you're vacationing. But it's a conversation that we have to have. And so, at the end, we're cracking jokes and it's fine. It's better to bring it up and to talk about it and say, like, hey, look, I'm sorry I messed up here. And we do the same, right? And we have to do the same with our clients. Like, if we mess up and we have to talk to our clients, we have to do the same. And so I think, like, there are so many parallels between how the agency works and how, like, property management works. And it's so easy to just quickly put yourself in their shoes. And so I think that is something that, like, I always am thinking about. Like, you guys have a very similar structure to, like, how we're structured in a marketing, perspective. And I understand that we are your client, just like we have clients. And so I appreciate the upfront and open honesty that you mentioned. Like, just bring it forward and break the ice and talk through it. And I think ultimately, if it's a true partnership, we can work through it together.
Totally. Yeah.
And then at that director level, oftentimes it seems like those folks are going on pitches to win new clients and things.
Yeah.
And so maybe talk about how your vendors or partners, I mean, I more think of vendor than partner, but you guys keep saying partner. Just talk about how those other folks can help with that process and where, because I'll like seed the conversation a little bit, but sometimes I got the impression that the property management person may be afraid to ask for help because they're like, well, I think I'm going to use you, but that may change depending on how the conversation goes. So I don't want to make you do hours that you're not going to bill me for because you can't bill me for it.
Yeah.
In order, but in our view, we'd rather try to help and then understand that, like, then it's on our radar if it's coming. And then we also are more in tune to the market. What does the owner want? What helps you win? And then if we don't get it, we'll just, that's fine. That's cool. We'll get the next one or whatever.
Yeah.
Meaning, like, even if you win the business, but you don't give it to us, that's fine.
Mhm.
So anyways, if you could talk a little bit about that.
Yeah, and you say vendor, and I say vendor too, but I always love to say vendor partner because again, it's a partnership. If you really are doing it right, I think it's a partnership. But if you're, I hear you 110%, and I think it's nobody wants to ask somebody to do free work,
Yeah.
and I hear that, but I don't. I think sometimes they don't think about it in the perspective that you just outlined, which is just like we get asked to pitch for new business from a third party management perspective, do we ever turn that down? No, because, and even if it's not us, it doesn't end up being us. It was an opportunity to prove what we have to bring to the table. And I think people, again, draw the parallel. You guys are doing the same thing. So yes, it's free work and you're going to give us some stuff and it might not come back to you, but ultimately in the end, it gets you out there. And I think, you know, when we've ever had situations like this or scenarios like this, I do try to say like, hey, this is a portfolio that we might be taking over. Like we need some data points here. Help us understand these markets. We don't work in them currently. Like we need some more insights. And what can you provide to me? And you know what? At the end of the day, if we don't get the deal, then yeah, obviously Digible doesn't get the deal. But it's better to work together, and like you said, you can uncover the needs of the client. Like the
Right.
digital agency can say like, okay, now I understand how this process works for them a little bit more, and then let's start thinking about how we can support them in this and make this easier for them as opposed to harder. But I think it's hard because again, people don't want to ask for free work. So
And it could be like, hey, we pitched, and then we realized that this ownership group has their preferred
yeah.
partner, and so be it. But what we got out of that conversation, what they love about their preferred partner is X, Y, and Z.
Yeah.
So thank you for the help. Sorry it didn't work out this time,
Yeah.
but now you know like what attracted them, and if something goes wrong, guess what? We'll mention you.
Yeah.
And then if it's something where it's like they like X, Y, and Z from that partner, but you don't do it, then it's like maybe
Maybe we
that's then a conversation to say like, okay, could we overcome that or whatever if the time came.
Yeah, for sure. I think we've done this tons over the years. Nicole and I would talk regularly, and I'd say, hey, you guys aren't doing this right now. Like, is there any possibility? Is this on the roadmap? Have you even thought about this? And even David, like when we used to have our regular chats, like I would just be like, are you guys ever going to do something like this? You know? And it's just good to ask questions. And I think what you guys have always been very good at, and I think other agencies can model after you, is that you want to understand the whole ecosystem of what we go through on our side. You've asked me plenty of questions about pitches over the years. You're like, so how does this work? Like, give me the play by play. Like, how do you prepare for it? What do you do when you go in? Like, what's talked about in the room? And I think you guys have done a great job at asking those questions to understand what the process looks like, and then say like, okay, well, we can help with that. Like, you're going to do a competitor analysis. Like, let us help you with that. We can look up in, Keyword Planner, what's going on in this metro market or whatever. So I think that's something that, like, again, ask questions. Like, digital agencies can model that after Digible and say, like, help me understand what you are going through so I can see where maybe I can fulfill a need.
Nicole, anything else on director before we move to the corporate side?
I'm glad you brought up pitches because we were kind of thinking about that earlier of like we have gotten more exposure to like what happens on that pitch. And just like our business, there's in this period of maybe quietness or darkness of like we're now invested. Right? I'm invested in, did we win this portfolio or this property? And then there's this lull, and then maybe we get surprised of like, oh, now it needs to launch tomorrow. And just like, when our team goes out and does a pitch, it's all about timing, and like there's different timings for different companies. And so I think just having that relationship will help understand more of that timing of like, oh, okay, we didn't hear back, or, oh, they're actually pushing this to Q3 or Q4. And like the timeline is kind of the wild card variable that as true as the partnership is, that's what you can control. And so I would just advise of like just having those open lines of communication and ask, and don't be afraid to ask. Like, hey, you flew out to Florida, last month. How'd that go? Yeah. And like keeping that open so that you can prepare on both sides.
Yeah. And again, I think that goes back to like, proactive communication. And this will segue well into the
Okay.
VP level.
Okay.
Yeah.
So I think like truly when you start to think about that VP corporate level, typically this person is overseeing a team or a department for the entire company. And that might stretch a couple states, or that might stretch the entire country or the globe, right? And so I think thinking about those higher level discussions about support, communication, how do we streamline things, how do we, kind of centralize some of these pieces, how can we make this easier on both sides, right? And so, for example, we work with Digible across the country. Somebody in the Midwest wants to sign up, and somebody in the Mid-Atlantic wants to sign up, and somebody in Florida wants to sign up. Okay, well, they have their individual account managers, and that's wonderful, but why should each of those account managers be chasing down 3 different people to get tracking information? Can we centralize that? Can we say, hey, the corporate team can help you with this? And so bring it all to us. We'll get you all of what you need. And what it does is it alleviates a burden from the regional marketing team. They no longer have to think about that and say, oh man, I didn't request tracking, because somebody on the corporate side's already done it for them. And then, on the agency side, it makes it a lot easier. Everything's coming from one place. So when you don't get the answer, you can just go back to that one place and say, hey, I need help with this. And this is actually something that I talk about on my monthly calls with all of my agencies is like, hey, are you having issues getting in contact with anyone? Are you having issues getting answers from anybody?
Great
about
question.
anything?
That's a great question.
Yeah, and it's like, hey, okay, the person over here might be really busy. You know what? Let me see what I can do about that for you. Let me see how I can help facilitate. I know they're swamped. I know they just had a takeover. They got a new rebrand going. So let me just connect with them and see if maybe there's a better point of contact for us to reach out to, or what is it that you need? Maybe I can help you. Right? I have access to all the systems. I can get you reporting. I can get you, connected with Yardi if necessary. Let's work together. And so I think that's something like from the corporate perspective, it becomes more, and the partnership builds because it becomes more about streamlining everything and that communication. And again, it goes into that process of like, help me help you, right?
Yeah, I think this is more of a I'm going to go down a series of questions that could be a little bit more frictiony, but it seems to me what we found helpful is when corporate sets a framework and says, okay, I want to make sure that we have call tracking on everything, or that we always hit these KPIs or what have you. Then it's us understanding then like, okay, so Michelle's setting that strategy at the top. But then you have the individuals at the bottom that are like, well, this owner wants this thing, and this owner wants that thing. So then understanding and having an open conversation about, okay, so Michelle, you have this framework, but they are asking for this customization that maybe Michelle doesn't believe in philosophically, but yet she knows there's sort of like other masters involved at the ownership level. So maybe talk about how to manage that as the partner, right? Because the partner doesn't necessarily want to tattle on the marketing manager.
Correct.
And if they only do what corporate says, they're worried about losing the business because the marketing manager is like, this is what that owner wants. And therefore, so you don't want to be sort of like the policeman, because otherwise people will start going to the dark web, right?
Yeah.
And not working with the partners that you've maybe set the framework with.
Yeah, I think so. One thing that I tell like our regional marketing team all the time is, please come to me. Please come to me with the issues, the things that you're having. Like, chat me. Let's get on a call and help me understand what you're going through. And then that way, if it is different than the framework that has been set, I understand the need, I understand the why behind it, and then I can help back you up with the agency. And I can help you, I can help be a voice for you on that front. So I can say it on my call with them, but also I'll tell them to refer to you and that you're, the king of the castle on this one. Like, this is your thing, this is your client, and you know them better than anybody. So you're the one that's having regular weekly checks with that client. I want you to be in charge here, but how can I empower you and how can I help you? Let me understand like what you're going through. It's the exact same thing like we were just talking about. It's like, help me understand what you're going through. Is there a solve with our current, setup? If there's not, okay, let's think about this. What do we need to do with Digible? What do we need to tell them? Or what do we need to adjust to ensure that that we can get this set up so that the client is happy?
Totally.
Yeah.
Something that's going through my head is like kind of this question of like, how do you scale the two-way street relationship? It's like one thing great for you and I, right? And then how do you make it safe for everyone underneath that structure, right? So if you're getting this, in this example, this owner request that's like, it has to be this way, but the strategy is set up here, usually that means there's a conversation that needs to happen at the regional level or the property level or the ownership level to be like, did I ask why 5 times to the owner? Like, do I really understand what they want? Or are they telling me what they want and I'm taking that for face value and then pushing that down to the agency or up to you to say, hey, here's what the owner wants to do. And so usually there's a conversation that needs to be had. And maybe we'll arrive at the same, outcome. But maybe not. Maybe we're like, oh, we actually think that they want this thing over here, but they just thought it was that thing. And there was a conversation that got us to a mutual agreement. And so it's really, how do you educate. That's been one of the hardest things for us at Digible as we scale the company so quickly, is how do you train on the industry, the education, the communication, the confidence to have those conversations at the ownership level.
Yeah. I think it's such a great question and such a great thing, truly topic, thinking about it, because I have this conversation a lot, and something that I've recently been reiterating to our team is, don't be afraid to ask questions and come from a place of, I want to understand. I do not want an opinion. Like, I'm not giving you my opinion. I'm just trying to understand what it is you need. We're uncovering needs. This is leasing 101, right? When they walk in the front door, you ask them why they need a 2-bedroom apartment or what they want. It's uncovering needs. And so I think there's a lot of times where a regional, marketing person might come to me and say, hey, the client wants this. And I say, well, why? And they go, well, I don't know. I'm like, well, okay, then let's get a call scheduled. And I'm happy to back you up on that. I'm happy to jump in and talk with the client and help, kind of decipher what it is that they're really needing or wanting. And, it's so funny. This just recently happened on like an unrelated, it was a website thing. And we got on the phone and, I started talking and I started asking the client questions, and it became very clear to myself and the marketing director, like, we did not have an understanding of what they were really wanting before we jumped on the call. We left the call understanding completely where the hiccups were, what we needed to fix, and what they're wanting and expecting of us. And it's like, it's that simple. I think again, it's that radical candor, right? Like, just really being honest and open and having those tough conversations, as opposed to trying to like sweep things under the rug or just say like, well, the client asked for this and I have to do it. It's like, okay, yeah, yes, we absolutely have to give our clients what they're requesting, but is there a way that we can do that doesn't cause havoc for everybody involved, right? Is there a way that we can maybe just figure out a quick little, this is just going to be a little offshoot on this one little process, and it'll get us everything that we need. So, yeah.
Yeah, to put a concrete example in place, years ago, I had these 3 different levels that I was dealing with, where there was a marketing manager that cared about number of impressions on a search campaign. And then the corporate was caring actually about like cost per click, and then I was caring about cost per lead.
Yeah.
And I was very like idealistic, where I was like, all they should ever care about is cost per lead. But cost per lead did not necessarily equal number of impressions, and it didn't necessarily help me on cost per click. And I was fighting it very. I was just staunch about it. I was, again, philosophically, that's where I was like, it should only care about cost per lead, because I think that's what any owner would eventually end up caring about. And I just struggled because I was trying to, my reports, like if I went and looked with the marketing manager, who then had to report to ownership, impressions weren't the best, like compared to the other vendors that were just going hardcore, like just at impressions. And then cost per click wasn't the best, but my cost per lead was the best. And nobody cared about that last one but me. And so I had to really I don't know, just come to terms and say, okay, yes, I think the industry is heading over here, and eventually to cost per lease, but it's heading here. I'm just a little in front of where we're at here with this client. So now I need to have a conversation with all of them and say like, okay, this is what I'm dealing with. So start at the top, and was like, you really care about this, just so you know, I'm being pulled into trying to go for that. So that's why these reports are being,
Mm-hmm.
you know, maybe not striking where you want it. So let's have a
Mm-hmm.
conversation about it. And it wasn't about getting solved at like then or for the next meeting. It was more about like, let's make incremental progress.
Yeah, to this.
Yeah. Every time we meet, that way, because you're never going to switch something like that gets that convoluted overnight.
Yep.
And so as long as you can show progress, it's fine. It's not more like, okay, I'm going to get canned if this
Yeah.
isn't fixed in 60 days.
Yeah. I think that is a great example, and something that we've recently done, on our side is we did a full review of what our metrics were. And we said, what are the most important metrics to us? What are our KPIs? And we have standard KPIs for digital campaigns that we are sharing with our agencies and saying, this is our KPI. When we look at the reports, we want to see these things and we want you hitting these benchmarks for us. And if you're not, we're going to start digging as to why and how we get them back. And just even saying that, I mean, it's been kind of mind-blowing, like the reaction from the different agencies. They're beyond grateful. And it just, again, let's speak the same language. Let's hit the same goal. And so I understand that cost per lead might make sense for you, digital agency, but on my side, we look at things a little bit differently.
Mm-hmm.
And so this is what I need instead. And, in recent conversations when we've shared those KPIs and those benchmarks, the agencies are very grateful because now they know what the expectation is. Give a clear-cut expectation so that they can succeed, so that they can hit their targets and their goals. You can't expect somebody to perform perfectly if you don't know what you're measuring them on. Like, if they don't know, you have to give them something. Like, if you're a pole vaulter in the Olympics and you know what the guy in front of you just did, you know what you need to do, right?
Mm-hmm.
So it's like, we need to do that in everyday business. We need to say, here is my expectation. How can you help me? How can we perform together to get there?
Totally. 100%.
Yeah, I love that, and it's extremely helpful for both sides to know what mark we're hitting. And if you don't know the mark, like you don't know what that pole vaulter did, then you can say like, for now, let's aim for 10 feet or whatever.
Yeah.
But just so you know, that might change. What can be a bad experience on the vendor side or partner side is that it's like they now think 10 feet's all I got to do, and it's like, hey, just warning, like it's 10 feet now, but later maybe 15. I don't know.
Yeah.
But let's just start somewhere and aim for it. And again, like let's iterate. But if you don't communicate that, I've witnessed internal teams that kind of get exhausted because they're like, I can never win. It's never enough. I always your team that's working for you wants to feel like they're winning.
Yeah.
And so if they just feel like they're some dog like that's getting kicked all the time,
kick them when they're down.
Yeah,
Nobody
yeah.
wants that.
Exactly.
Yeah. You can't keep moving the goalpost.
Yeah.
I mean, you can, but like, there's got to be a conversation. Like, hey, we're moving the goalpost.
Yeah.
So yes, nobody wants to be kicked when they're down. And I think in my experience with my vendor partners, when there has been issues, especially at this VP level, I take them to senior leadership of that company, whoever that vendor partner is. It is whoever is in charge of this team, because I don't want to kick them when they're down. I want to go right to the top and I want to say, hey, Nicole had an issue here. Help me help you. What can we do about it? And let me give you some candid feedback. And then you are the leader of that team, so go tell them however you see fit and whatever makes sense for your company and your inner workings. Totally. That's not my job. That's your job. And so, but I'll do the same on my side, right? If I get feedback about, like I said, if I have a call and I'm like, hey, what's going on? You guys need anything? And it's like, hey, we've been having some issues here. I'm like, I got it. I'm on it. I'm going to go have a conversation about that. And so, I think truly, when you're in this position, working with senior leadership, whoever your vendor partner is so important, because it can help prevent when the team feels like everything they do is wrong. I've lived that life before. I had a boss who literally told me every single day I messed up. And every single day I went home and just cried. It was
if you miss that, I'll just start texting you each morning.
I do not miss that, David. I'd love a text from you anytime, but not for that.
Okay. Nicole, maybe if we could wrap up on how to handle it when the partner should put their foot down or just not bend, because I feel like a lot of partners often they either overflex or they are too inflexible, right? On like, so how do you find that right balance of like when to either say, okay, yeah, we're gonna do a make good on this, or you know what, no, we're holding the line.
I think it's a great question, and I think it's one thing that you can have these like company, standards or rules or structures in place, but then you have to leave slack in the system. You have to leave some flexibility for you to make that individualized for the partner or for the client in this case, where it's like, okay, maybe from Digible's standpoint, we issue make goods, when these 5 things happen, and it's always going to be above this amount or whatever it is. You can definitely have these triggers, but then you have to leave some flexibility to say, okay, what was the situation? What does the client care about? Did we have a conversation? And what will be mutually beneficial for them? For some clients, it's like, great, I could give you a refund check, but maybe you actually really want more clicks or more impressions, on a campaign.
Or you want the credit.
Right. Yeah. You want to be able to use that for added value to be able to boost a campaign's performance. And so I think just having that conversation is super important, knowing what you care about as a company, knowing what the client cares about. And then I think this doesn't work, with all clients, but something has been very successful for our partnership is like you get and understand the business side, right? And you will often ask like, interesting, like what's your cost on that technology? Or like not just because you're curious, like that's your brain is wired that way. And so then you can also help in that conversation to say, okay, you have a hard cost here, as a company. It's not like I have nothing, there's no cost here. And so instead of, maybe writing a full credit, let's do this partnership. So I would say it always comes back to the conversation. Definitely from the company standpoint, you need to have systems that scale and you need to train your people on that system. So it's not always an exception. If the exception becomes the rule, that's not a good situation.
You don't have a standard.
Then you don't have it, for anyone to be in. And so I think it's really like making it a true conversation and being a little bit flexible for the situation that arises.
And I think from our side, right, from the management side, if we are partnered with somebody and we come to you and we say, hey, we need this, and you are inflexible. This is where we will absolutely say, no, we cannot do it this way. I think the management company then has to take a step back and say, well, can I do it this way? Or is this not the right partner for me? Totally. And I think that kind of gets lost sometimes. Multifamily is such a small industry and we build all these great relationships and we've known each other for years and years. And so you feel like you have to make it work. And sometimes it's easy. Sometimes it's hard, but it's better to say, I hear you. I understand where you're coming from, but unfortunately for my needs in this moment, that will not work for me. And if this ever changes, please let me know, but I think right now I need to go in a different direction. I don't think there's anything wrong with that. Totally. People don't seem to want to do that. And maybe again, it's a tough conversation to have, but I think going to the open, honest communication theme that underlies all of this, if I come to you and say, I'm sorry, like I can't move forward with you because of that, that's okay. But you know what? Maybe you get more clients that are like that. And then you start to rethink your procedures down the line and you change something. And it's like, hey, I want to reach back out to you. We've changed some things. I want to tell you about it. I love having different conversations over time. Like I've worked with you in the past. You are not the right agency or the vendor partner for me at that particular time, but I'd love to revisit it. What else have you done that I need to know about? I do it all the time. So, yeah.
That's great. Well, Michelle, this has been awesome. Thank you for being
Thank you so much.
Were you saying radically candid?
Yeah.
Is that what, yeah. Thank
radical
you.
candor, baby.
Yeah.
Yeah. All of our buzzwords.
Yeah.
I love it.
If people want to get in touch with you, what's the best way?
LinkedIn. Yeah.
Michelle Smith, not Myers.
I think it should be Michelle Smith. Michelle Smith.
David still has me in his phone as Nicole Brennan, so.
Yeah. I don't want to change it.
That's so funny.
She hit me about it last week. I was like, I don't want to change this.
Oh, yeah, that's really funny.
Yeah.
I think I'm still in my husband's phone. That's Michelle Myers. It's
There
funny.
you go.
I saw somebody yesterday, and I ran into them, and I said, "You look so familiar." And she's like, "You do too. What's your name?" I said, "Michelle Smith," and she's like, was it always Michelle Smith? I was like, it was Michelle Myers. She's like, yes. 2014, we did this. And I was like, oh my God. I was like, wait, your name has changed. And she's like, yes. And it's very funny. So.
That is really funny.
Yeah.
I love that she knew to ask that. You know,
yeah.
like, what's your maiden
It's
name?
really funny is there's still some people in the industry that call me Michelle Myers. They've known me for that long. And
Yeah.
No, this is really fun. Thank you guys so much for having me and for chatting. And yeah, if anybody wants to chat, I'd love to. I'd love connections in the multifamily space. So
Awesome. Well, thank you.
yeah, thank you.